strategy earlier that these terms may be used interchangeably in the practical environment, but each of these terms of action by which an organization achieve its objectives. So how are we going to do it is a part of my strategy. Business model is formal description. Sorry. Okay. Business model is a formal description of an how an organization should be configured to provide value to consumer based on its strategy, right? So how an organization would do its work, what would be the overall business model so that we can co-create value or provide value for the customers. And then there are tactics. Tactics are the specific methods by which the strategy is enacted, right? So certain techniques, certain methods that we go ahead and use in terms of implementing or enacting the strategy is what tactics are. Like we said that these terms, strategy, business model, and tactics are often used interchangeably, although they each have different meaning. Itil4 strategist, direct, plan, and improve defines these terms as given above. So the DPI module, the one that was common between becoming a managing professional and strategic leader, they have information about strategy, business model, and tactics in more detail. Okay. Now let's understand based on a vehicle analogy here. Example, let us demonstrate how strategy, business model, and tactics to realize value through a vehicle analogy. These vehicles are available in variety of shapes, sizes, and features. So to provide value by satisfying each driver's specific requirements. So if we talk about cars, let's say there are sedans, then there are SUVs, then there are hatchbacks, then there are electric ones, different types of cars is what we have. Each design results in differing capabilities for each type of vehicle. Well, of course, design for a hatchback would be different and design for a SUV would be different. A sedan would have a different design. So the design can always change based on the different types of cars that we have. For example, if a driver needs a vehicle for a use on the mountainous or unpaved roads, they need a vehicle with powerful off-road capabilities. And if the terrain is competitive landscape, the car design will be the strategy. Well, again, depends on what would provide value to the consumer. So if a driver is looking to go on a mountainous roads or unpaved roads, they would need to have a strong or a powerful off-road capabilities in the vehicle. Whereas if the terrain is a landscape, then you may just have a different strategy for it. Now, how do we understand the difference here? The strategy. First, we do the strategic assessment, understand the terrain, determining any special features the driver requires to navigate that terrain. So we do the assessment of the strategy, what would be the overall terrain that the driver is looking to go for, and what would be any other special features that the drivers are looking for. Then strategic choice, we select a strategy, selecting or designing the appropriate car, depending upon what the needs are. Business model would be the strategic assets, the car, its features to be used for the terrain, who will maintain it, that would be defined by my business model. And tactics would be the driving techniques for specific conditions and situations. For example, driving on a slippery road, making fast turns, how you actually go and do that. What methods do you use? What techniques do you use is what my tactics is. The role of business models, let's say a business model shows how every component should collaborate to provide value rather than focusing on how each product or service individually provide value. Well, of course, when we talk about the business model of an organization, we are looking at an organization as a whole rather than looking at a specific product or a service in terms of providing value to the customers or the consumers. A business model is a framework that consists of three major themes: how an organization works to realize value based on its products, services, and offerings. This includes suppliers, resources, and assets, key activities, and the cost structures associated with the value creation. Then, how an organization creates value. This includes via customer relationships, channels that are provided to the customers, customer segments, revenue streams, and how an organization fulfill its promises and expectations. Well, of course, whatever promises and expectations that have been set for the consumers, how are we going to fulfill that? Sometimes you may just have a very good product, but if you are not able to fulfill your own promises and the expectations for the can fail. Canvas is what we can always use. Business and operating model can be detailed and complex documents. Alternatively, the models can be explained using a canvas format. This figure depicts the business model canvas developed by Osterwalder and Pigner. The strategic choices are summarized across each key element of the organization, which represents how an organization creates value and delivers to its customers. So again, it's a visual way of looking at the overall business model, identifying what are my strategic choices, where do I need to work on, so what are the key activities that I need to perform, what are the key resources that I need, what are the key partners that would help me in delivering things, what are the possible channels that I can uh, provide to the customers, the customer relationships that we create, the customer segments that we have, the revenue streams, how are we going to generate revenue, could be part of my business model canvas as well, and the cost structures, how much money do I need to spend. Again, all against the value proposition as to what kind of value would be delivered to the customers. How am I going to provide value? So the basic purpose or agenda here behind understanding the business model is to look at how an organization co-creates value based on different aspects, the activities, powers, resources, the cost that we are for, the customer segments, channels that we provide for the revenue stream, and overall value, how much we are spending and what is the revenue that we are generating out of it. Business template, business model template defined here in the pitch, wherein we look at who application will serve, what is the customer scope. Again, there can always be different types of customers using different types of products. And example, everyone in the world buy a number. There is a specific customer group. There's a specific scope for the customers who can purchase those products and services. So we need to keep them in mind. What it will offer to them. Of course, it's not always about what value in terms of money it is providing. It can be a Ferrari or a Lamborghini can be a sign of a status or a status symbol for the customers. It can be for their use of performance-based machines that they can always offer. So what is the customer scope and what are we going to offer it to them in terms of delivering value? And how it will be delivered, the value creation or the operating model. Well, for example, I was again looking at one of these documentaries created for Bugatti is the word right now. So for them, they do destructive testing. They do a thing of tires, their engine, to make sure that the value is being delivered to. That's all part of my overall operating model. So I'll explain how the business model will prevent replication from competitors, value capture. Or in other words, what makes it unique or difficult to emulate. You may have seen many organizations that go for patents, right? So they would own a patent for a particular product and a service so that the others cannot copy it. So we need to identify those ways as well, which would give us the competitive advantage in the market, and we would be able to sustain for a longer period. And that is what they're defining in the template. It's value position, what customers, what is the value proposition, who are we doing, what are we offering, then value delivery and capture, how are you able to deliver, and why we copy. So what makes it unique? Then similar to business model, there are operating models. Business model is more focused on the value aspect that we're going to deliver to the customers. Operating model is more about how are we going to deliver that value. So operating model, again, a conceptual or a visual representation of how an organization co-creates value with its customers and other stakeholders, as well as how the organization runs itself. You remember the operating model defined by ITIL? Service value chain is what the operating model is, right? So which is part of my overall service value system. There are 6 activities, different combination of those activities in order to deliver value to the customers. That's how an organization runs itself on a day-to-day basis. Now, that's what the key difference between a business model and an operating model is. Sorry. Business models are used to describe how a business captures value. Models are about, or they are used to describe how the organization will be run, right? So the key words here, value that the business model looks at, and how the organization will operate, it will run, is what operating model is about. Yes, please. Digital, yes. This could be this could be proprietary as well. It could be outsourced as well. So that depends how an organization has identified unique value proposition for itself, right? So now, like I was just said that the organization, that is just one example. Organization, more effective technology that we use, if we have more effective processes, more mature processes that we use, if we have more better way of documenting the knowledge and the information, all those kind of factors can also be used in terms of making an organization different from others, right? So it's patenting is just one action that we are talking about. It could be proprietary in the way in which the organization is delivering its products and services, and it could be outsourced as well. And then these business model, let's continue. And one in the business model part. Business model in this case would be the card design for specific terrain. So for mountain terrain, for more landscape one, that would be my overall business model. Operating model describes the required components, how they are installed, how it operates to provide value to the driver. For strategy, they say where does the organization want to be and how does it get there would be part of my strategy. The design of the car that ensures it is suitable for a particular terrain and meets the driver needs, therefore providing value to the driver. That would be part of my strategy. Business model, how does the organization create value for the stakeholders? The features that provide value to the driver in particular terrain. For example, the engine size or type, the tire types, multiple business models can be used in a strategy. Well, of course, depending upon what are we focusing on, we can always have multiple business models. Whereas an operating model is how an organization ensures effective and efficient operations. The car's components, how it is assembled to ensure that it performs as expected. For example, engine timing, tire pressure, power steering sensitivity, maintenance plan. All these factors would be part of my operating model. So we can always consider strategy as how are we going to deliver the value or achieve the overall objectives of the organization. Business model is about how do we create value, what kind of engine sizes, type, tire types are we going to use that would help us to provide value, and how it will be configured together. How will it perform together depending upon the engine timing, tire pressure, power steering, maintenance plan would be my operating model. Role of an operating model. Listen, operating model is a tool used to facilitate the design and configuration of the organization's operations to enable the creation of value outlined in the business model. So, of course, whatever we have defined as a part of value in the business model, how do we realize that value is done based on the operating models. There are two key themes in an operating model. The key work that takes place at the center of an operating model are known as organizations' value streams. Okay, do you understand or remember the relationship between the service value system, service value chain, and value streams? Do you remember it? That was part of foundation. Okay, I'll quickly give you an overview. Yeah. So the service value system is there that we understand at the outermost is how the organization's components they work together in an integrated way to create value. Then within service value system, there are 5 different components: the guiding principles, governance, service value chain, practices, and continual improvement. So the one that we are talking about here is the service value chain, the operating model. Service, yes. There are 6 key activities within solution which plan, engage, improve, then there is decision, and transition. Then there is obtain, build, and then there is this last one, which is deliver and support. Right. So based on these 6 different activities that we have within the service chain, we create different combination activities, which is called the value stream for a specific context. For example, if I say that there is a new customer who's looking for a service, right? That's a context. Now, in that case, what combination of activities are we going to follow? If it's a new customer, first we need to engage with the customer, understand their requirements, Then I go to plan to see if it's worth investing in the services, if we are going to deliver these services, if we can deliver these services or not. Once a go ahead is given, that is when I go to design and transition in order to put those components in the environment. Now, while those service components in the environment, I identified there are certain missing components. So when there are missing components, I go to obtain and build to get those components. Once the components are available, then I again go to design and transition in order to implement those components in the environment. Once the implementation is completed, the validation is done, the testing of the service is done, that is when I start delivering the services to the customer. And then I continuously look for improvement. Now, this sequence that I've created, engage, plan, design and transition, obtain, build, design and transition again, deliver, support, and improve. This combination or this sequence is called the value stream. That's how the work will be conducted, right? Got, got my point here? Great. So that's how we do. So value streams are always at the center of the operating model because the value streams is how are we going to conduct the work, how are we are going to execute work, which is what they are defining here as well. So at the center of an operating model, the organization's streams, the different combination that we created, which illustrate the main work an organization need to do to deliver its value proposition to the identified consumers. The context in which the value stream will be performed. So, like I said, the context in the value example that I shared with you was that there is a new customer looking for a service. That was the context. Based on that, I created a combination. So that context in which the value streams will be performed include how the partners and suppliers will be involved. So if in case I need any partners and suppliers, that was a simple example. So I did not use partners and suppliers there. Will be involved in the value streams and creation of value, and where the work done in the value streams will be located, and assets are needed in those locations to perform the work. So what assets, what resources do I need, and where the work will be performed is also something that we may look at when it comes to creating these value streams, which in turn would support the overall operating model of the organization. Furthermore, for the context, set decision structures and processes and practice ownership required to do the work in the value streams. Sorry. Well, of course, when it comes to creating these value streams, who is going to perform those activities? What skill sets are required? At what level, what kind of decisions can be made? What processes do we need to follow? What practices do we need to follow? All those kind of factors. The application or other technology and information services needed to perform the work throughout the value streams. Well, of course, just in case we use any specific technology or application to do the work, and how the targets will be decided and performance measured to ensure that the value streams are functioning optimally. How are we going to measure these value streams? Right. So creating the value streams is one thing and measuring the value streams is another. When it comes to measuring the value stream, I can always measure it in terms of time. I can always measure it in terms of effectiveness. I can always measure it in terms of efficiency, right? So if they're efficient or not. So how are we going to actually go ahead and measure the performance of these value streams is also something that we need to identify and define. Now, similar to the business model canvas, we can always have the operating model canvas as well. which can be used to plan and improve the operating model, wherein we can always have suppliers, locations, organization, information, and the steps that we identified, the combination of those activities that we identified earlier. Along with that, we need to integrate it with the management system. Management system would, of course, go ahead and identify the decision structures, the skill sets that are required, the other resources that we may need. All those factors would be considered as well. Now, the purpose of having these canvases here is to visualize. Uh, by visually looking at something, identify the improvement areas more easily, right? So think of a report. Let's say I create a complete Excel based report for you wherein there is just simply data which has been input, has been used as an input. There are no graphs, there are no pie diagrams, there are nothing. There is just data that has been kept. And then on the other hand, there is an Excel file wherein you see visually. There are pie diagrams, there are graphs, there are histograms, there are multiple ways which can visually depict. It would always be easier for us to look at something which is more visual to us, more graphical to us. So similarly for the business model canvas or the operating model canvas, we can always visualize it to identify any improvements that might be there with the operating model. So that was the first chapter right here, wherein digital information communication is what we talked about. Apart from that, digital technology is any technology that digitizes something or process the digital data. It encompasses IT and other parts of OT that has been digitized. Then information and communication technologies connect OT devices to one another and to information systems. The resulting solution comprise of what is known as Internet of Things. Then there is digital organization, digital business, digitization, and digital transformation, wherein digital organization refers to an organization that is enabled by digital technology to do business significantly differently, to do significantly. Digital business refers to the activities that enable the organization to fulfill its purpose and which are based on the use of technology. Well, of course, for every organization, digital business can be sometimes dependent upon the organization. The definition of digital business will always be different. For digital transformation refers to the use of digital technology to enable significant improvement in the realization of organization's objective that could not feasibly have been achieved by non-digital means. So whenever we bring in significant improvement to achieve the overall organization's objective, that is when we call it digital transformation. Furthermore, service and competitive advantage. The products and services that an organization offers are central to its strategy, as this is how it realizes its purpose and co-creates value. Each of the services that organization provides is based on one or more of its products. Organizations own or have access to a variety of resources, including people, information, and technology, value streams, processes, and partners and suppliers. And we can always refer to Wadley mapping, which is a method that is used to understand how these services and products are created and delivered and their competitive advantage. Tiers of strategy, things that we looked at. Many of the approaches to digital strategy are based on a tiered model. The organization strategy is called the business strategy or the enterprise strategy. Digital strategy is a subset of business strategy and applies to those part of business that will be impacted by digital technology. The IT strategy is separate, but supports both the digital enablement of the projects and established part of the organization. So they can always work as running the IT related projects or digital projects, or they can always support the organization for the existing technology as well. Then there are business models and operating models. Business models, the term strategy, business model, and tactics are often used interchangeably, although they each have different meanings. A business model shows how every component should collaborate to provide value rather than focusing on how each product or service individually provides value. Operating models. Operating model refer to a conceptual or a visual representation of how an organization co-creates value with its customers and other stakeholders, and how an organization runs itself on a day-to-day basis. All right, let's look at a few questions. Knowledge check based on what we have talked about in this section. A team connects through an online video conferencing tool. This is an example of. That's information technology. Sure. Should we lock it? Okay. Communication technology it is. Well, now see, that's how we have to look at the question in terms of the context that they are saying. They're saying a team connects through an online video conferencing tool. Though it is using part of information technology for sure, but it is more of a communication technology because that's what the purpose of the tool is. Okay. Social media, online games, and mobile phones are examples of social media. That is digital technology. I gave you the same example while you were discussing that concept. Yeah. Paper, scan, scan. Stop. What is absolutely correct? All right. So it was the first chapter. Next one here talks about the strategy and the service value system. Hmm. For this, all the guiding principles that we have, focus on you, start where you are, process iteratively with feedback, collaborate and visibility, and work holistically, keep it simple and practical, and optimize and automate, and how to leverage strategy to react to disruption, know how to relationship between digital and IT strategy, and the components of ETL HVS. If components like we guiding principle.
Recording in
Activities
progress.
collaborate to enable value creation. Specifically, the service value system articulates both what an organization strategy is and how it will be realized. This is where they're defining these five components of a service value system. The guiding principles, governance, service value chain, practices, and continual improvement. These are the five components of service value system. And demand and value are the inputs and outputs respectively. These are not the components of service value system. Many people get confused. Opportunity and demand. Opportunity and demand, service value system, value is the output. Okay. Okay, quite a few topics here. Opportunity and demand, value, governance. ITIL guiding principles, continual improvement, and the practices that are there. So let's see opportunity and demand. Strategic position. Now, strategic position refers to the way an organization responds to opportunities and the shifts in demand. How flexibly can we actually respond to any shifts of digital that are happening? Or how quickly avoid those opportunities? Is there a surge in demand? How quickly can we identify that shift in demand? Or those are the kind of things that we look at when it comes to strategic organization.
Recording in
Or
progress.
if in case I have identified an opportunity in the new market, that is something that I look at. For example, they say instead of withdrawing from the piano manufacturing business due to a drop in traditional piano sales, Yamaha invented a mechanism to turn acoustic instruments into automated playing pianos. Right. So, of course, the based on the traditional demand or the that we had for pianos, that was decreasing, but rather than pulling out of the business, Yamaha identified a way in terms of leading it as an opportunity for the organization. So they connected multiple acoustic instruments to play the automated piano. Then there is demand. Demand refers to the input to the service value system based on opportunities and needs for the internal and external stakeholders. Well, of course, again, another input is what could be demand. Strategy defines how an organization responds to the changes in demand. Changes tend to impact the demand for existing services. As a reactive strategy, the organization alters its operation to meet the change in demand. So again, as a reactive action, when we see or identify the change in demand, we can always adjust our operations in order to meet that demand. Then there can be environmental changes that impact the demand in following three ways. First, variable demand from the same market for the same products and services. So changes in demand from the same market for the same product or service could be there. Demand from new markets for the existing services and products or for new products in the existing market, representing both an opportunity and a variation in demand. Well, of course, demand can be there for the existing products and services from the new market or for new products in the existing market. So we need to identify that as well. And there could be a sustained reduction in demand. So, of course, the example that they used for Yamaha, that's an example of a sustained reduction. It was not that just one day people buying pianos. Slowly and gradually, the demand for those pianos reduced, which led to make changes in the operations for the organization Yamaha. Then there is value. What is value for you? What do we understand by this term called value? Mhm. Okay, absolutely. The perceived benefits, the importance or usefulness of something can always be considered as value. Now, value is not just in terms of money. Revenue generation is not the only factor that we use in order to identify value. It's not about how much the customers are paying and if they're getting the services related to that payment or not. It is not always the case. You may have seen there are multiple organizations, for example, the government organization. They may run certain initiatives, they may run certain projects or programs which are there for public welfare or people welfare. It is not there to generate revenue. But if they are achieving the public welfare or for whatever reason that they did that project, then it is value for them, right? So the intended outcomes, if they are being achieved, is considered as value. And like I said, not just money. Value, it is the perceived benefits, usefulness, and importance of something. Value is co-created by the organization and other stakeholders as it seeks to meet the demand and fulfill the opportunities. Well, of course, traditionally, value used to be the responsibility of the service provider, that as a service provider, we need to deliver value to the customers. But now it's not just the service provider who has that responsibility. Both service provider and consumers have that responsibility to co-create value. Consumer also needs to understand their set of responsibilities. They need to fulfill those responsibilities and then co-create value along with the service providers and the consumers, or service providers and other stakeholders. Now, a very simple example, if I want to use internet services at my home, I go to an internet service provider and they start providing me the services. That's their part, their responsibility that they have played. Now, if in case I don't have a laptop, I don't have a smart TV, I don't have a mobile phone using which I can use those services, that is not on the service provider. That is my responsibility as a service consumer. So both the parties needs to understand their responsibilities in terms of co-creating value. It's like I said earlier, it's not just about delivering value, it's about co-creating value. Then tactical and operational elements focus on value of individual services, products, and value streams. Well, of course, the tactical elements, the operational elements, they are more focused towards these individual services, products, and value streams. Whereas strategy focuses on overall ability to co-create value in a particular environment. Organization defines the value proposition that individual services and products must achieve. Well, of course, when it comes to operational level understanding, tactical level understanding, they may just be more focused towards a particular product or a service, if it is delivering value or not. But when we are talking about the strategy here, we are looking at an organizational level, that how well are we able to co-create value along with all the customers that we have. Based on the collection of data, based on analysis of the data, we can always understand that and take a informed decision about this particular aspect as well. So if in case we need to retire a service, or if in case we need to terminate a service, we can always go ahead and do that. Unique value proposition is a short statement that explains the unique value that an organization provides. The organization must be able to explain how it co-creates value in each of its market or markets. This explanation will include a high-level overview of the value elements that are specified in every product or service line, such as supported outcomes, increased efficiencies, and reduced risk. An example of a UVP or a unique value proposition is what they have shared here as well. For MailChimp, send better emails. For Lyft, ride in minutes. Dollar Shave Club, a great shave for a few bucks a month. No commitment, no fees. FreshBooks, the small business accounting designed for you, the non-accounting, right? So of course, we actually go ahead and uh, offer something unique to the customers, and that is defined within this short statement. That's why we call it a UVP. Strategic position and products and services. The portfolio of services and products must be aligned with the organization's strategic position. Well, of course, the kind of services that we are providing, the kind of services that we plan to provide in future, the kind of services that we have retired, everything needs to be aligned with the strategic position of the organization. Because as an organization, we have a destination to reach, we have a vision to achieve, right? So in order to achieve that vision, we need to have the right set of services that we are going to offer or we are offering to the customers. So if it is an alignment, then there are always a good chance that the organization can achieve its overall vision. Then there is governance. What do we understand by this term governance? Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. So governance as a concept is a mechanism using which the organization is directed and controlled. Sorry. How do we direct and control an organization? By defining the rules, by defining the policies, by understanding the regulations, by being compliant to those regulations that we may have, by understanding the local conditions, by understanding the requirements from the geographical location that are coming in. All these kind of factors is what we understand when it comes to governance, and we go ahead and direct and control the organization. So governance refers to a system by which an organization is directed and controlled. In the context of strategy, the major activities of governance are evaluate, direct, and monitor. Not just in the context of strategy. In any case, these are the three key activities of the of governance, right? So we go ahead and evaluate the current state of the organization. We set the right direction in which we want to move as an organization, and then we monitor, right? So evaluating the strategy, portfolios, relationships with other party is what we usually do when it comes to evaluate as a step or activity. Direct, assign the responsibility for and direct the preparation and implementation of the organizational strategy and policies. And of course, ensure that the or monitor the organization's performance, practices, products, and services if they're working as expected or not. If I have to use a very simple term to define governance, we need to ensure the things are working as they should, right? So how do we do that? That can always be based on different controls that we may have. Governance in the context of strategy. You see, the strategy and the operation of an organization are subject to governance. Well, everything in the organization is subject to governance. Always remember, governance starts at the top of the organization, at the board of directors level of the organization. Then the responsibilities can be delegated to the levels below. So the responsibilities can always cascade. You need to maintain governance at a team level as well. You need to maintain governance as a at an individual level as well. But from where are these responsibilities coming? These are coming in from the top. So if you have a governance body or governing body or a steering committee within the organization, that does not mean that they are going to oversee everything that is happening within the organization. They would have their own set of activities that they need to look at. They would have their own area or the horizon in which they would look at things. Rest of the things would be delegated to the lower levels. Similarly, it would cascade down below till the last level. This does not mean that the governing body has direct oversight of all the aspects of the organization. So like I said, a governing body, a few group of people cannot always oversee a complete organization. Instead, it means that all the aspects of the business are designed and operated within the scope of agreed strategy, policies, practices, and other aspects. Then there are the guiding principles. Now, guiding principles in general are the recommendations that we have. When I say recommendations, these recommendations can always help an organization to take a decision in any scenario. So every organization follows certain set of guiding principles. Similarly, ITL also offers 7 guiding principles that we have. Okay. Do you remember the purpose of these 7 guiding principles, or should I quickly go through with it? Because again, this is coming from the foundation level. So should I quickly give you an overview of each of the, okay, cool. So the first one, which is focus on value. Focus on value principle. The purpose of this principle is to ensure that any activities that we are performing within the organization should directly or indirectly contribute to the value of the organization that it is providing. Now, when I say any activity that we are performing, it could be anything. If it is use of a new technology, if it is a change in a process, if it's introducing a new process, if there is documenting something, if there is eliminating any documentation, whatever that we are doing within the organization should help us to achieve value at the end. That's what the primary purpose of this particular principle is. Then there is start where you are. There is no need to build everything from scratch. Even when we are talking about digital transformation that we need to bring in, we need to first go ahead and understand what is the existing state of the organization, identify what can be used in the future state, which means when we digitally transform the organization, what can we use from the existing stage. So that is where start where you are as a principle comes in. Again, any technology that we can use, any people that we can use, any uh, uh, processes that we are using, any roles that we may have, anything that can be used or transformed in the future state, we need to go ahead and use it. Then there is progress iteratively with feedback. Now, progress iteratively with feedback again is about not doing everything at once, right? We don't need to do a big bang project. We don't need to do a big bang implementation. We don't have to follow that approach. We can always break down the larger component of work into smaller, more manageable components, and then we need to move forward. Why is it important? Because when we break down the work into smaller components, it's always easier to maintain the focus, or we can focus on the limited amount of work rather than focusing on whole. Of course, we need to keep the end in mind, but we need to work on something which is little. Then there is collaborate and promote visibility. Well, sharing knowledge, avoiding silos within the organization is what this principle looks at. And now we need to share information. We need to share knowledge with with the people in the organization and outside of the organization to the greatest extent possible. So with all the stakeholders, I would say that's a more generic term that we can use. So we need to share information with all the stakeholders to the greatest extent possible. Now, why do I say greatest extent possible and not all the information should be shared? Because of the reason that many times organizations work with confidential or sensitive information that cannot be shared with everyone. So we need to identify who has the authority to know about what information, based on which we can always go and share the information. Another key purpose of sharing the information is to promote the visibility, right? So urgency is something that we need to focus on. We need to create that sense of urgency of doing the work with other people within the organization so that we can complete the work on time. Then there is think and work holistically. Now, nothing in the organization works in isolation. Okay, look at your organization from the top, from the bird's eye view. You would see there are many different aspects. There are many different departments. There are many different technologies. There are many different processes. There are many different roles. There are many different regulatory requirements. There are many different things that needs to work together. We need to identify that level of integration between different elements within the organization And we also need to identify that how change to one element can have an impact on any other element, right? So that we can manage things appropriately. We don't have to manage things individually. We have to manage these things in an combined manner, in a consolidated way. Then there is keeping it simple and practical. Keep it simple and practical as a principle is about identifying the minimum number of steps in order to complete the work, in order to achieve the output. First point. Second point, we need to identify and eliminate any waste that is there within the organization. Now, waste could be anything. It could be a process itself. It could be a process step. It could be anything. So we need to identify that waste and then eliminate that waste so that we can be more efficient. And third, we always need to have an outcome based view. What is it that we are going to achieve? Not the output, but the outcome. Output can be anything, but what is the result of using that output is my outcome. So we always need to have the outcome based view if we are achieving what is expected of it or not. Of course, optimize and automate. Well, we need to optimize things within the organization, automate things within the organization, specifically the repeated activities that happens on a day-to-day basis or multiple times during the day. If we can automate them, then it's always a good idea because we can again be more efficient in those terms, and we can always use the resources for doing other important work rather than sticking to it. One thing that we should always remember about these principles as well is that these principles themselves don't work in isolation. These principles work together. For example, if I'm talking about optimize and automate, let's say I've identified an routine activity that needs to be automated or that can be automated. First thing, I need to keep my focus on value because any activity that I'm doing would contribute directly or indirectly to value. So focus on value would be involved. Start where you are. I need to identify what is already automated. What do I need to automate? I need to define my scope, the landscape under which I'm going to work. Progress iteratively with feedback. Of course, if it's a larger automation, then I can break it down into smaller parts and then work towards it. Well, I need to let people know about this automation as well, collaborate and promote visibility. I need to see if because of the automation, any other aspect is getting affected. So think and work holistically is also something that I need to look at, and keep it simple and practical. Well, of course, automation is about simplifying things and then automating them based on the technology. So, like I said, these principles themselves don't work in isolation. They work together in an integrated way in order to achieve the outcomes. Any question from principles? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. See, many of these principles you would find in the agile approach as well. What they say is that ITIL is non-prescriptive, right? So it would not prescribe anything. What it suggests is that these are the principles at minimum that we should use. Apart from that, if we are following any agile approaches, if we are following any, let's say, lean approaches, any Six Sigma approaches, then we can always go ahead and combine those principles along with these principles itself. That's it. That is what ITL suggests. Now, uh, like I said, ITL is non-prescriptive. So ITL would never mandate anything for you. It would not say that you should do it this way. No, this is the way. If you want to modify it, you can always go ahead and do that. The ITIL guiding principles are essential for any organization pursuing digital strategy. Well, of course, this is something which can always be useful when it comes to bringing in the digital transformation. ITIL guiding principles help organizations to adopt and adapt ITIL to their context. Well, of course, Like I said, we can always adopt and adapt ITL practices to their own concepts. So guiding principles can always help in this. This can help to integrate multiple methods into an approach to service management. Like I said, it can be combined with Agile, it can be combined with Lean, it can be combined with Six Sigma, it can be combined with most of the modern ways of working. So we can always integrate multiple methods. These are universally applicable to nearly any initiative. Well, of course, any type of initiative that we are doing, these are applicable to most of it. And encourage and support continual improvement at all levels. Well, that is something which is the unsaid rule within the ITIL. All the levels of the organization are subject to continual improvement. So, including all the principles as well, we can always go ahead and use these principles in order to bring in improvement or enhancement to the existing ways of working. Then strategy and guiding principles, how do these relate? I say the ITIL guiding principles are not independent. Organization need to consider all principles each time they need to make a decision. They need to prioritize the work, review the improvement opportunities, or resolve a conflict. So like I said that these principles does not work in isolation. They work together. The guiding principles are essential for any organization pursuing digital strategy. However, these are not the only principles an organization will use when creating and implementing its strategy. So like I said, that these are not the only principles. If we are following an agile approach, there are 12 guiding principles. You need to integrate others. You can do that. The strategy should include any principle that decision makers need to use when implementing a strategic initiative or when defining a lower level strategy. Well, of course, we can always take decisions based on the principles. Then there is continual improvement. The strategy and the continual improvement. The primary objective of the strategy is to ensure that the organization continues to be viable in a changing environment, which may require improvement of existing capabilities, but more often aims at expanding or reducing its operations. Well, of course, the primary objective of the strategy is to improve the ways of working of the organization. Continual improvement can be applied to an organization strategy in two ways. One, as a strategy management practice, its activities and outputs are subject to continual improvement. Well, of course, as an organization, if we are following or using the strategy management practice, then whatever activities that we have, whatever outputs that we create out of it needs to be or are subject to continual improvement. And continual improvement can be the basis for strategy. This is an important aspect. Now, let's say my organization again is an analog organization or a manual organization. What I want to do, I want to digitally transform the organization. What is the purpose behind it? The purpose behind it is to improve operations. The purpose behind it is to improve the products and services of the organization. So, basis that continual improvement opportunity that I have identified, I can create the overall strategy as well. You say, as an example of this approach is reducing the order to delivery time for an existing product line, thus ensuring organization's competitiveness in the time sensitive market. So based on that improvement of I identified a strategy. And then we have the practices. So you may remember that there are in total 34 practices that have been defined within ITIL. Out of these 34 practices, they have been categorized into three major categories: the general management practices, the service management practices, and the technology management practices. So how does the practices and strategy relate to each other is what we look at. Say an organization strategy specifies how it will achieve its objectives by utilizing value streams at all the levels of an organization. Well, of course, all the levels of an organization, how are we going to utilize the value streams and create value would be defined in the strategy. Practices provide the processes, resources, partners, and technologies, and how they will contribute to the strategy. Well, of course, based on the we can always identify the processes, resources, partners, technology that we'll need in order to fulfill the strategy. The following three practices are used to map the organization's capabilities and assets to its desired outcomes. So like I said that there are in total 34 practices. Out of those 34 practices, these are the practices. These are the three practices which commonly contributes to strategy. First one, the strategy management practice. Now, strategy management practice at an organizational level. So they would have the responsibility to create the business strategy or the enterprise strategy. Right. Portfolio management practice would be related to keep the right portfolio or maintain the right portfolio for the organization to support its strategy. And architecture management practice. Different types of architecture. The management architecture, the technical architecture, the business architecture. All those architecture is what needs to be appropriately maintained in order to achieve the overall business strategy. So out of those three key practice, 34 practices that we have within ITIL, these are the three key practices that we always look at. Strategy and the practice, the Wardley mapping. Again, practices must evolve with strategy. Strategy involves continually updating and aligning the practices which are created and configured to achieve these specific objectives. Well, of course, whatever practices are there, we need to continuously update them, evolve them, align these practices so that we can achieve the overall objectives. And the organization's architecture should be continuously updated. This is to show how each component contributes to strategy and to performance required for an effective strategy. So like I said, the overall architecture of the organization, be it the enterprise level architecture, be it the management architecture, the business architecture, the technology architecture, this also needs to remain aligned. This Wadley mapping focuses on mapping the capabilities to the products and services. It can also be used to map how practices co-create value. Wherein, again, the topographical map is what it helps us in creating. So, situational awareness, decision making, and the action that we need to take. And that was the chapter. Opportunity and demand. The strategic position refers to the way that an organization responds to opportunities and shifts in demand. Strategy formulation must include a comparison of organization's internal environment, such as the current objectives and operations, with changes to its external environment as well. Value. Strategy focuses on overall ability to co-create value in a particular environment. Strategy defines the value proposition that individual services and products must achieve. Governance. In the context of strategy, the major activities of governance are evaluate, direct, and monitor, the ones that we talked about. The guiding principles are essential for any organization pursuing the digital strategy. Continual improvement. Continual improvement can be applied to the organization strategy in two ways. improving the activities and outputs of strategy management, and the continual improvement as the basis for strategy. So like we said that based on identified improvement opportunity, we can always go ahead and create the overall strategy as well. And then there are the practices. So the practices provide the processes, resources, partners, and technologies, and how they will contribute to the strategy. Practices must evolve with the strategy. Again, let's look at a few questions. What is the value of using Wadley's strategy cycle? Okay. Any other guess? Oh, why? Let's see. What is the first point? Situational awareness. First, we need to understand where do we stand? Why are we doing this? That is when we go ahead and define the strategy, and that's when we take the actions going forward. That's when we take the decisions. But the basic purpose of Wadley mapping is to understand the situational awareness. Well, don't worry about that question. Like I said, that this is not going to be part of the exam. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Which guiding principle is primarily concerned with customers' revenue and growth? D and B. Okay. Revenue and growth. Which one would you like to go with? Absolutely correct. Focus on value it is. So consumers' revenue and growth, we are helping the consumers to co-create value. Sorry. Yeah. Do you have a question? Mm-hmm. 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 Well, that's absolutely correct. There must be someone who is actually going ahead and approving the purchase, right? For those switches. So that person would be responsible for understanding as to what value would it bring and how does it align with the overall strategy. Hey, identify the missing word in the following sentence. The purpose of space is to ensure that the organization continually co-creates value with all the stakeholders in line with the organization's objectives. Well, to be honest, all of the options could be answered here, but we need to identify the primary one. Well, absolutely. That is the correct answer here. Well, of course, see, when we talk about an organization, we earlier said that anything that exists within the organization should have contribution to the achievement of the overall objectives. So focus on value as a guiding principle can be there as well. Four dimensions could be there as well. Service request management practice could be there as well. But that's the definition of a service value system or the purpose statement of the service value system. And that was the second chapter. Sir, what time do you usually take your lunch? Around this time? Okay. So we can break for lunch. All right. So let's break for lunch. Come back. We have enough time. So we can come back in an hour and then we can begin from here. All right. So I'll see you after lunch. Have a good one.